Great. So thank you everybody for coming today. My name is Christina Haswood. My pronouns are she, hers. I am a candidate for the Kansas House Representative in District 10, which covers the southeast of Douglas County down into Baldwin City. Thank you everyone for hopping on to our community conversation. I'm incredibly excited to hear insight from our lovely guests and hear what questions you all have. So just so you all know, this is a recorded conversation, so folks who were unable to make it can tune in later. I'll give anybody who wants to turn off their camera, change their name tag, etc., a minute to do so. For about the first 30 minutes, I have some conversation prompts for our guests. And then for the last 20 minutes or so, I will open up to audience questions. And of course, if you have questions anytime during the next hour, you can put in the chat box for everybody or privately for me. And let's see. And then, yeah, so if you have any questions, just raise your hand at the end with the hand function. I'll call on you. We'll start off by having our guests introduce themselves, tell us your name, pronouns, and unions that you represent, and I'll just go down the list of how the flyer was. I know I'm going to get this wrong again. Seamus?
Close, no problem. My name's Seamus Albritton. I'm currently the president of Lawrence Professional Firefighters, which is the local affiliate of International Association of Firefighters, so IAFF 1596.
Thank you so much for being here, Seamus. I'm so excited to have you here. The next we'll go on to Hannah Allison.
Hey everybody, thank you Christina for having us. This is so great. My name is Hannah, my pronouns are she and her. I'm the chair of PAL CWA, the Para-Educator Association of Lawrence, and we're affiliated with the Communication Workers of America as our national union. I'm also a member of AFT. I'm a graduate student at KU and I study labor history. Yeah, that's me. So excited to be here with y'all.
Thank you so much for introducing yourself, Hannah. And next we'll go on to Lindsay Buck.
Hi everyone, I'm Lindsay. My pronouns are she, hers. I'm the interim president for the Lawrence Education Association, which is the local affiliate of the National Education Association. And Christina, thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for being here. And now we'll go on to Mimi Horn. You're on mute, Mimi.
Sorry, let's try it again. My name is Mimi Horn, and I am a school bus driver for First Student here in Lawrence. I've been there for about 7 years now. I've joined the union about 3 years ago, and then almost 3 years, I am a union steward, and I'm glad to be here. I'm with Teamsters Union 696. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you so much for being here today. And now we'll go on to Jeff Plinsky.
Hi, Christina. My name is Jeff Plinsky. My pronouns are he, him. I am the vice president of the Lawrence Education Association, and I am one of the lead negotiators for our contract negotiations team.
Great. Thank you so much for being here today. So for the first question, we'll just keep this order too. First, I'd like to hear a little bit about what got each of you involved with your current job position. So we'll start off with Seamus.
Yeah, so I don't actually have a background or family background in labor unions or organized labor at all. I was lucky enough to get hired as a firefighter when I was young here in Lawrence, and I enjoy my job. Fell in love with the community, which convinced me to stay here and continue being a firefighter. As far as getting involved with the union and the organized labor with the department, I was just kind of lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time. And my original fire crew that I was staffed with included 2 of our executive board members. So from very early in my career, they took me under their wing and showed me the value. And you know, it's very obvious, especially here as city employees, the benefits as compared to city employees who are not under a union negotiated contract. The benefits are vast, and how we are treated in the workplace is vast. So that's kind of my story.
Thank you for sharing. Fun fact, I live by a fire station too, and it's a little loud sometimes, but
I bet.
Yeah, but I'm like, wow, look at them. They're really out there doing it, saving our community. Thank you so much for being here and sharing that. So now we'll go on to Hannah Allison. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved with your current job position.
Yeah, it's a long story, but I'll try to make it short. I grew up in rural North Carolina, so I was probably an hour away from Mini Union Local. I grew up in a really small town. And I actually started out as a community organizer, organizing on environmental issues, which is something I'm so excited about your platform, Christina, and fighting for a Green New Deal. So I moved to St. Louis to do community organizing and environmental organizing work to Missouri when I was in my early 20s. And I got involved with an organization called Jobs with Justice, and they organize faith, student, community, and labor unions to fight for social change. And through Jobs with Justice, I got to know some really amazing leaders and unions. I met leaders from something called the Organization for Black Struggle that laid the groundwork for some of what happened during the uprising in Ferguson, some of like the most transformative, amazing community organizing that's happened in the last 20 years, and learned about how labor unions could be a vehicle for social change. And so since then have participated in a couple different organizing campaigns, but became the chair of our Para Educators Union about a year and a half ago, because our current chair had to resign actually over a work site issue because she didn't have the health insurance she needed. So that's how I got involved in PAL, and our organization actually just won our union recognition. So we are officially recognized as a union for paraeducators, instructional support assistants, library and media assistants, and health office assistants. And we're currently organizing custodians, food service workers, IT workers, administrative assistants, so all the other classified staff in Lawrence Public Schools.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm so excited for you to be here today. Now we'll go on to Lindsay.
So I grew up in a really small town in Nebraska and didn't even realize unions existed. But my father was a milk truck driver, and when I was really young in elementary school, he had a near fatal accident that left him nearly completely blind. And so in a small rural town, it's hard to find work if you don't have a driver's license, especially. And so he became a paraeducator for our local school district. So I grew up going to school, seeing my dad in the hallways, supporting young scholars as they were in the special education program, and was really inspired to see him do that work. And so I decided I wanted to go into special education, and learned about unions through one of my advisors, who was kind of gave me a glimpse into what unions are, the power of unions, and how we can work to make schools better for students through that work.
Thank you so much for sharing. I'm so excited to have educators here and of the school system here representing our community and helping be a voice for those who do really hard work every day. Now we'll go on to Mimi.
Okay, how I got involved was basically after being on my job for about 4 years, and the working conditions in which we had to go out and still drive that bus 6 o'clock in the morning, and it's 10 degrees outside, and the windows are still frozen up, and the conditions where we had to leave the lot to meet a schedule. The safety issues that were happening, that we were riding buses that were not heated, where drivers were sent and forced to go out without having any monitors. So I started raising the issue, and people were listening to me. Someone pulled me to the side and was like, you know what? Have you heard about our union? I was like, well, no one ever mentioned a union to me. And they were like, hey, I'd like for you to meet someone. That was Matt Hall. Been up from there. I tell you, I got involved there. Became union steward, was able to also negotiate a competitive bidding agreement with First Student. I've been a lot of places. I've met wonderful people like Hannah and wonderful people on board here that I've seen before in different instances. If you don't stand up for something, you'll fall for anything. And I just want to make sure that these issues and concerns are heard. And anything that I can get involved with within the community, I'm there. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Mimi. School buses are extremely important to me because I've been riding it since I was in kindergarten. And my best friend, her mom was a school bus driver, Kim Fuller. I don't know if you know her.
You are.
Yeah. My best friend is her daughter. So I grew up knowing a bus driver my entire life, basically, since we've been friends since we were 4. So yeah, thank you. So now we'll go on to Jeff. How did you get involved with your current job position? You're muted, Jeff.
Yeah, I was trying to find the button. There we go. When I started teaching, I was teaching in a small town, and my second year of teaching, my contract was not renewed for reasons that were outside of my control, and I thought it was unfair and was awful. My second job, immediately after that, I got a job teaching in private education where unions didn't exist, and I saw some of the things that happened to teachers in that situation, and some of the treatment that they faced. And so when I came to work in Lawrence, I figured out by then that if there was a union, I probably ought to be a member. And so I joined, and about a year into that, I went and shot off my big mouth and told the negotiations folks that I didn't think they'd done a very good job, and they invited me to join them in their efforts. And so I volunteered myself for the negotiations team, and I've been on there for most of my career since then. And then subsequently I shot off my mouth again, and somebody said, well, why don't you run for vice president? And I did. And so really what I've learned being in a union is if you shoot your mouth off, you're going to get jobs to do. So, but that's how I got here.
Thank you for sharing that. Yep, I think that's how I got here too. So the next question is, I know for some watching, labor rights and unions are an unfamiliar topic. Can you talk a little bit about why unions are important? So we'll go with Seamus.
There you go. Thank you. Yeah, they're extremely important. You look at what's the difference between here in Kansas and different areas of the country where unions may have a stronger hold or ability to affect their working conditions. A lot of that, it's all part of state legislation and local legislation and the politics that surround that to a certain degree. But there is a little bit of confusion out there if you talk to people who are not familiar with the labor movement, who may see, I've heard the words selfish before, or looking for self-interest to a certain degree. I believe that's a complete fallacy. I mean, you just have to look at the community right now and look at the campaign that PAL and LEA are doing, Safe Schools. That's not just about employees. That's about our students as well as in our communities. And if you look closely, you can find that in all the labor organizations around town. We do the same thing with the IAFF, right? We're not just advocating for our firefighters to be safe. Firefighter safety means community safety. When we're safe, you guys are safe. And you'll find that with every workplace, right? When the guys that are picking up our trash are safe, then our community, public health is safer, right? They don't deserve to be picking up trash where they could get stuck with needles that could lead to, certain communicable diseases, right? If they're safe, public health is better. It's all a snowball effect. When there's more power in unions and the working people have a say, there's positive influence throughout the entire system.
That's absolutely true. Can you give some examples on the firefighter side, maybe in the past, of legislation that you guys advocated or currently working on?
Yeah, so one of our top priorities, at least from a state level, is some of the presumption laws that are going on at the state of Kansas. So currently, there are what I would describe as weak presumption laws in the sense of cancer or mental health, PTSD. PTSD is an epidemic among public safety, just not just fire. Well, it's very difficult to prove that, at least in the eyes of the state, in the eyes of work comp and insurance companies, that you have PTSD from things that are related from firefighting or being on those calls that are traumatic and a detriment to your mental health. Right now, that's a fight where you have to hire a lawyer instead of just presume, yes, this is your job. You know, there's a very good chance that this is a cause of your job and you should be covered under work comp.
Yes. Thank you for sharing. That's a very important thing with mental health and our first responders having to deal with that. Making sure that their access to mental health care is more of a easier path. Thank you. So now we'll go on to Hannah. And the question again, can you talk a little bit about why unions are important and maybe how you started your union?
Yeah, sure. So I think unions are important because unions are about power, right? We live in an incredibly unequal society. We live under capitalism, under white supremacy, under patriarchy, right? All these structures that confine us that I think you, Christina Wright, are like struggling against. And that's, again, why your candidacy is so important. Obviously, I'm very excited to be on this call with you. But we're trying to change that, right? Because it's horrible. It's like an awful way to live in these like unequal power relations. So unions are the way that when workers want to come together, like Mimi was talking about, to fight to change the unfair working conditions and the unequal power relations in society, right? Between us and the bosses, right? We can think of like the 99% versus the 1%. We can't fight them alone, right? But together we have an incredible amount of power, right? Together we can come to the table and have 50% of the negotiating power against the boss, right? So I think that's really crucial, and that's for me is when I think of like, what is a union? A union is just a group of workers that have chosen to come together to fight for what we need at work, and to put pressure on the boss. And I think there's this other like really beautiful and amazing element to the labor movement across the world, that, you know, sometimes in the United States has also been like fraught with white supremacy and patriarchy, right? Like you'll hear the labor movement is old or is pale, male, and stale, right? So it's not to say that like the labor movement in the United States doesn't have problems, doesn't wrestle with like swimming in the soup of white supremacy and patriarchy and capitalism. But it is to say that like unions also can be this like super transformative vehicle for social change, because we live in a segregated society also, by race, by class especially, and unions are some of the only place we have multiracial struggle, right? And so that's like really, really exciting. And I come back to MLK marching with the sanitation workers, just when I think of examples from labor history. I mean, just countless examples, right? The sit-down strikes in Detroit, the 1199 SEIU in New England, right? This amazing, powerful union fighting for healthcare workers. So just like that potential for us to create a multiracial social movement through our unions, I think is really, really important. I could say more, but I'll stop for now.
Thank you for sharing. And can you just go maybe a little bit more into how you started your union?
Yeah, so I was actually not there when our union began, but I think 6 or 7 really phenomenal women who, kind of like what Mimi said, were frustrated about the working conditions we face as classified staff. We get paid incredibly low wages to do the work that we do. We don't have liability insurance, right? So if we're hurt, or if a student is hurt, we could get sued. We generally sort of just don't get the respect for our work, right? Which is because our work is at the intersection, not just of us being hourly staff, right? And sort of like the like lowest workers in our system. It's also that we serve students with special needs, right? And we live in a society that puts disabled people in a really difficult position, right? When we could be flipping that, right, and fighting for disability justice and fighting for a society that recognizes all of us. But so we as paras sort of sit at the intersection of that. So that's some of what I think brought the paras to organizing before I got here. And then when I got involved, we realized that we really needed the power of a national union that was ready to fight, right? We went with CWA. We decided to organize with CWA because we knew and had seen in other places where CWA locals had really fought for their workers, like the Verizon Wireless strike probably 5 years ago now, where they won major improvements to their contract and higher wages. So that's just like a little bit about how I got involved.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. It's such an inspiring story. And thank you for being a part of that. So now we'll go on to Lindsay. Can you talk a little bit about why unions are important?
Yes. So a quote that often comes to mind and that we hear a lot is that it's the Diane Ravitch quote that teachers' working conditions are students' learning conditions. So it's important that we're funding public education to make sure that all of our students' needs are met. And I think the current pandemic has put a huge spotlight on how important and how vital and how much our community and our economy and everyone depends on education and on teachers and on paraeducators and on all the staff. Like we are such an important piece of making our world work. And so, collective action through our unions, we can push for changes, much like Hannah's been talking about and Mimi. I think that's one of the big important pieces of unions is that we can all work together to make change for the betterment of our students and thus the future of our world.
Thank you. And can you share maybe any past issues or current issues that you guys are going through?
Sure. So one thing that I know at all levels, national, state, especially, we're always kind of trying to monitor and disrupt privatization of education, vouchers, funneling public education dollars that are supposed to go to all students. We want to try to prevent that because what we know is that in public schools, we take all students. It doesn't matter background. All students are welcome in public schools. And we know that private schools don't have to take everyone. So we need those public education dollars, and we need to prevent things like that. Racial, social, economic justice in education. We know that institutional racism prevents students from achieving their very best and getting the opportunities they deserve. And so that has become a focal issue at our national, state, and now local union, working to disrupt those systems that affect our students and can put them at a disadvantage. We want to break that up and disrupt that.
Thank you for sharing a great list of important issues. And now we'll go on to Mimi. Can you tell us why your union is important?
There are several reasons. Since I've become part of the union, Teamsters 696, one of the safety committees I'm sitting on at the job is to hold the employer accountable for these safety issues, to follow up behind them to make sure that they're doing their job, make sure that we're on the same page. And my main goal getting involved in the union was the fact that school bus drivers not receiving unemployment insurance, because the sector job is singled out in the statute as not being eligible for unemployment benefits. So monitors, custodians, food service workers, they're all eligible to receive unemployment insurance, meaning you have workers working side by side on the same bus. One gets unemployment insurance and the other one don't. So if you're head of a household or you're a single parent, grandparent raising grandchildren, It takes a real bite of trying to provide a decent life for your family. Usually you end up going to food banks. Usually you ask agencies for rental assistance. You know, the same things happen during holiday breaks, but having no access to unemployment insurance, people have to look for other work, which means that there are people, you know, they're raising their hiring rate for new drivers coming in. But I've been there 7 years, and I can name the percentage. 25% do not even last 2 years. And thank God that the governor, Kelly, she closed down the schools during the pandemic, because this was the only time that we received unemployment insurance. Thank God. And once again, we'll be knocking on the senators and the representatives' doors, lobbying on President's Day to get the bills passed, the House bills, the Senate bills passed, so that we can receive unemployment insurance. That right there is something that's my passion now, because I think it's important for everyone. A lot of people don't have a voice to speak, but for some reason I've been chosen to speak, and they're going to listen, and they're going to listen until this is passed, right? Thank you. That's the reason why I want to join the union, to get this change, to get this over, just to make sure that we have a security net, because it's hard out there, you know, and we want our people to come back, because the students, we have a relationship with them. You know, when a driver doesn't come in, their whole day is messed up, you know, just what Hannah was saying, and also what Lizzie was saying. You know, we work together on the same team there, and we all should be treated as equal. It's time for school bus drivers to be treated as an equal footing with those jobs. So be it a school bus driver, you know, it's a skilled profession. You know, it's not nothing that we take lightly, and we love what we're doing because we're still here. So I'm here to make sure to speak on behalf of those who can't speak. We're all on the same page.
Thank you for sharing. You know, definitely collecting unemployments when, you know, those around you are getting that. I think that's extremely important. And, you know, when I say I personally know bus drivers that are single parents or head of their households. I have another friend too, who's a bus driver, and she has like 7 kids. So this is extremely important. And this is, you know, everyday people too. Thank you so much. Yep. Thank you. I look forward to working with you. So now we'll go on to Jeff. You know, tell us why your union is important.
I do think the things that have been said before are all absolutely valid. And when you first asked the question, I thought, well, I'm going to talk about the power imbalance. But I think Hannah said that about as well as anyone could. The other thing that jumps out to me that maybe we haven't touched on is I think unions have a really important and valuable psychological effect for the workers. And that is the knowledge that you're not by yourself. One of the cultural things that goes along with America is this toxic Western idea of the rugged individualist, right? We're supposed to be able to stand on our own 2 feet and bear any, and bear any difficulty, you know, face down any obstacle, et cetera, et cetera. And that's great. That makes for great fiction. But the reality is when something really awful or something difficult happens, it's oftentimes almost impossible for a single worker, particularly in an imbalanced situation, to cope and deal with that in any effective way. They don't have the knowledge, they don't have the skills, and oftentimes they just don't have the bandwidth. And one of the things that the union does, and we've talked about it sort of at the national level, and we've talked about it at the state level, and we talked about it at the work site level, but at the individual level, and I think this is equally important, is when tough things have to be endured, coped with, and overcome, the union means you're not doing that by yourself. You know, Seamus talked earlier about folks in his world that deal with PTSD, and I suspect knowing that you're not dealing with that by yourself is probably a very powerful tool and provides an awful lot of hope. Today, or in today's world, in the world of the pandemic, knowing that I'm not having to miss my students by myself, I'm not having to feel inadequate in my teaching by myself, you know, being able to talk with others and figure out that we're all feeling this, and that we're all struggling with this, and here are the ideas that we can share with one another, and in doing so, we lift each other up. And so at the personal level, the union provides an incredibly important, incredibly buoyant psychological effect that I don't think could be overstated.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and how you guys are, overcoming this really tough time. Thank you so much. So we'll go on to the next question. What unique challenges and issues are your unions facing right now? I know I asked you guys a little bit about what's previously been done and what you guys are currently advocating. Feel free to put in more issues too. And how can the Lawrence community or the Kansas State Legislature help you? So now we'll go to Seamus.
Yeah, I'll touch on something that I briefly did earlier. Is there's always a group out there that wants to see our organizations disappear, and would like to have a more authoritarian style of management or leadership, whatever you want to call it, right? And Kansas legislators no different. Something I said earlier. Where's the defining difference between communities in Kansas versus communities in our more labor strong states on the East Coast or West Coast, right? Well, it's state legislation. Why can't we have protected bargaining rights statewide? Why does it have to be a choice? You look at the recent campaign by the paras as well as the Teamsters. Right now in the state of Kansas, it takes at a minimum a small political grassroots campaign just to get your employer to sit down with you. Where in other parts of the country, as soon as you get enough uni cards signed, that's it. They have to sit down with you. Why does it have to be different here? I don't believe it has to be, but that change is going to have to come from the state level.
Thank you so much for sharing that and elaborating more on that. So now we'll go on to Hannah. What unique challenges and issues are your union facing now, and how can the Lawrence community or the Kansas State Legislature help you?
Yeah, so there's a big one, which is that on Monday, paraeducators and instructional assistants and health office assistants and library and media assistants from our union are going to teach remotely outside of the district office to let our administration know, wearing red. As you can see, many of us on this call are wearing red. We are going to wear red and teach remotely out in front of our boss's office to let them know that we are sticking to our demands of going remote until winter break and expanding access to specialized services for our most marginalized young people, our Black, Indigenous, and other people of color students, our disabled students, our students who are poor and working class, our LGBTQIA+ students. We are fighting for those students to have the specialized services they need through what are called temporary IEPs or individualized education plans and other sort of community support services. And we're fighting to stay remote until December because our administration right now doesn't really have a plan for keeping bus drivers or paras and other instructional staff or teachers or our students safe. So we are going to be out there all day on Monday at 110 McDonald Drive, and I'm happy to share the Facebook event. So it would be great to see folks there in solidarity. I know there will be parents and families and community members there as well for that action. And then in terms of legislative action, I mean, it's interesting. So there are laws that govern public sector organizing, union organizing, and laws that govern private sector union organizing. And though I'm an elected leader of a public sector union, I do want to talk a little bit about private sector organizing because I think actually in Kansas we have great potential. It will take many years and a long-term movement for change to fight what are called right to work laws, which is a really misleading term that in the private sector essentially makes it harder for workers to organize a union. And interestingly, if you overlap the map of right to work states in this country with slave owning states from pre-Civil War, it overlaps almost exactly. So those right to work laws, and there was a great article about this a couple years ago in the Lawrence Journal World, those came about actually sort of during the end of Jim Crow in the South, when right-wing white business elites were trying to stop Black and white workers from organizing together. So we have those right to work laws. Many states in the South and the Midwest, as I said, do. So thinking about, what would it take to build a coalition? And again, this is like, we're far from this in Kansas, given the current makeup of our legislature. But Christina, you're on the way. You're gonna take us there, I bet. But so we would need a powerful movement of unionized workers, ununionized workers, community members, legislators, to really kind of stem the tide against private sector unionization and those right to work laws.
Thank you so much for touching on that. I know when I was learning about union policy, the right to work, I was just so confused. I was researching it for a week, like, do I understand this or not? But yeah, and thank you so much for advocating on the safety of our school district too. I have my opinions on that, but we will go ahead and go on to Lindsay.
I mean, Hannah hit the nail on the head with the safety issue. That is, that since March, that has been, the pandemic has been overwhelming to our schools and our communities and everything. But our educators, certified classified staff have been consistently, at least 70%, advocating for remote learning until at least winter break, like Hannah said, because many of them are so fearful about either contracting COVID-19 themselves or taking it home to a loved one who has a comorbidity or other risk factors. If a educator lives with someone who has that, they wouldn't qualify for ADA accommodations because it's not them. It's not them. So we have so many educators who are terrified of causing harm to their loved ones, and so that's it really is like a matter of life and death for some people, and that's why this fight is so important. I'm excited to join PAL CWA in solidarity on Monday because this fight is so important to keep our not only our educators but our students safe too. Students have risk factors, and we can be thoughtful about how we serve the needs, like Hannah said, of the marginalized students that we have in our school system, and make sure the needs of those students are met while being extremely thoughtful in our safety plans for in-person learning. And that can't be rushed. That has to be something well thought out and well planned, and we are not there yet. So we do need more time to be able to figure that out. The other thing that I would add is the HEROES Act. We need another relief bill desperately to be able to do this, to be able to sustain this pandemic and meet the needs of our communities, our schools, our students. So I would encourage everyone to reach out to your legislators and advocate for the passing of the HEROES Act.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and again, our school systems putting our children's health a priority, and as well as the employees and staffs and workers. Yeah, more work still needs to be done. So now we will go on to Mimi. What are unique challenges and issues your union's facing right now, and how can the Lawrence community or the Kansas State Legislature help you? Oh, I think there she is. You're muted.
Thank you. The volume went real low during Lindsay. I was just trying to turn it up. Thank you, Lindsay. I just want to piggyback just a little bit there on both Lindsay and Hannah, because this is serious, what's going on, what we have to face now that we've been off enforced retirement for 6 months, school bus drivers at home. Now we're finally back to work, and there are safety issues that we're looking at, temperature gauges. I know it is the requirement, the responsibility of the parent, et cetera, to make sure that the child's temperature is taken before they, get on the bus. We're looking at different issues as well, because during the day, I am a high school bus driver. So I see students leaving campus. They leave campus and get in a car with another individual and go to lunch with them and come back, or may not come back. Who knows where they go? Then they come back into the school. Are the temperatures being taken as they exit school? looking at the safety factors. Okay, are we to stop them and test them before getting on the bus? Have a monitor as well, et cetera, et cetera. What are we to do? Oh, we are to still let them ride home without knowing. And then we're looking at the medical part about it. You know, who's paying for this testing? You know, what about our time off? You know, what if we are admitted into, and then where are we located? These are the issues that we're looking at right now, because I'll say 75% of our workers are very interested in knowing the answers to these questions. I know the school board, they were up until like Monday night, until after midnight, etc. And a lot of our concerns had not been addressed. Well, we're not saying we heard no, that we could not get it, but it may be the school board's decision, especially if we're wanting to come back. Now, we're eager out there and we want to work. We want to make sure that those who's coming on the buses have masks. We're going to be masked down, sanitizing our buses, safety issues, you know, who's sanitizing our buses to make sure that the very next day that we're getting up and doing the same thing. What if we have a trip that night with athletic? Okay, so who's sanitizing our buses before 6 o'clock a.m. when we're out to do the same thing the next day to put our school kids on there? So these are the issues of what we're looking at right now. At the end of the day, we just want to make sure that we're being safe and that the employer is keeping us safe, even if we have to buy our own temperature gauges. But then that's extra work, sanitizing our own buses after each route, after each midday, after each PM route. That is a lot of additional work, but that essential workers have been doing the whole time. You know, we want to make sure that we're safe. And a lot of our employees are elderly, retired, single parents that can possibly bring something home to their family. So we have a lot of concerns as well that we're trying to get addressed and trying to get answers before starting back, when they want us to start back. So we do have questions about that. We were looking for answers on that. So we're just going to stay on them until we get these issues either resolved or come to a conclusion, because we're all on the same page and safety is number one and important.
And when the school boards decided to move on to hybrid, did they have some type of plan for the bus drivers, or was it kind of like you guys need to figure it out?
Oh, right now, you know, we're working, said to be working starting on the 19th, 4 days a week, no work on Wednesdays, but then sterilizing the buses after AM route. Anyone that have work programs, they have any type of job sites or off-site that we take them, transport them during the day, that those buses are to be sanitized. And being a union rep, I'm just holding them accountable. We're going to make sure that there's a sanitation team so that we can do our job properly, that the next kid don't come in and get it, you know, because of somewhere that he done sat and it hasn't been sanitized. Yeah, hybrid, as far as we know right now, it is Monday, Tuesday, and then Thursday and Friday until further notice. But we are having a driver shortage. Now there are right now 8 routes that are not covered. There's 17 monitor routes that are not covered as well. And it's give or take on those. Well, we could jump in and we substitute on those if we have single routes, and then we'll go ahead and help another route. But then there we go. There's a safety issue. I'm coming from one bus that hasn't been sanitized. I'm going to the next. And I understand that the schedule was important, but our safety is important as well. Yes, we have to not say, well, one day at a time, do the best you can. We're tired of hearing those. We need a plan and action on that. And right now, some of our city workers, they wanted us to help organize a union with them as well. And the majority vote won, Teamsters, 65-1, yay, the sanitation department. And we're currently speaking on other areas of the city as well to get them on board. And these are the issues that we're just dealing with right now, not to say that they are important than anything else.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I assume you guys are hiring.
Yes, we are, and we have raised the rate to $17 an hour, and we can be found on First Student Group Careers. Okay.
All right, thank you so much for sharing. And next we'll go to Jeff. What unique challenges and issues is your union facing now, and how can the Lawrence community or the Kansas State Legislature help you?
There we go. and I want to talk a little bit about how the legislature can help, because I think that probably is probably the biggest chunk. Lindsay talks about the HEROES Act, and in the short term, absolutely that is a need. But I think probably the if we're going to look beyond that, financial resources for schools that can function at all levels is going to be, or is really vital. Mimi mentioned that they were that now they're paying $17 an hour, which is better than they've had for a while. But if you mentioned to Hannah the $17 an hour, her coworkers probably would hear that and get pretty excited about it. The folks that the trouble we're having hiring paras right now is because they can go to work at Target and make better money. They can go deal cards in a casino and make better money. They can do almost anything else and make better money. And it's in what it says to me is that we value our children less than we value the people who work at Target and deal in the casinos. And not that those folks aren't important people, not that those folks aren't valuable, and their work ought to be rewarded too. I'm not saying that they ought to be brought down. The problem is that we have this notion that schools ought to run on the cheapest, most efficient model possible. And there are a lot of places where an efficiency model makes sense. Efficiency models are not good for children. And we need to invest the resources to properly educate our children, to have loving and caring adults around those children to lift them up and support them. And that takes money, because all of those adults that we need to care for the children also have families that they need to provide and care for. They also have mortgages that they have to pay. They also have bills that they face. They also have, the rest of life still goes on. And so for the state legislature, a stable and adequate funding stream for education is absolutely vital. And under Governor Kelly, that some steps have been made in the right direction. Prior to that, at the Supreme Court case that forced the legislature's hand under Governor Kobach was incredibly important, but that work's not done. You have to understand that you have political forces that believe Brownback's experiment was the right way to go, even though clearly it was a disastrous failure in the state of Kansas. They think the problem was that we didn't give it long enough to get working. And so, when you get elected, Christina, because I have faith that you will, you're going to have people coming to you saying, we need to spend less on schools. We need to stop taking in tax dollars. We need to do less for our community because government should do less. And I encourage you, and I encourage the community to push back against that, to fight against that. There are needs for our community that are so large that they cannot be handled on the individual level. They must be handled at the community level. We have to provide community support, community resources. And the folks you see here on this panel are all examples of individuals who work because they love their community, but they also love their families, and they need to be able to support those families.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Definitely when I was learning about unions, that you guys give a lot of back to the community, and this is a whole functioning system. And oftentimes your guys' jobs are so important. For some reason, everyone else thinks you guys shouldn't be paid as much as, corporate greed is, I think, one of the biggest obstacles a lot. Does anyone in the audience have any questions? You guys want to raise your hand for our panel or type it in the chat? No? This was a great discussion. I'll just give, one last opportunity, one more time around if you guys have any. For my campaign, there's a lot of young people who who look up to the campaign or follow the campaign. And as we saw in our last election, younger voter turnout increased. I think Kansas is probably one of the top 5 states in the country who got a large younger voter increase. So I wanted to give this opportunity if you guys want to shout out if you're hiring or you have internship opportunities, or anything for the students or young students to get more involved in your industry or union. So we'll start off with Seamus.
Yeah, we're hiring at the turn of the year. We got a recruit class going on right now, and come January, the expectation is that we'll be taking applications again. So it's a fantastic job. You get to work under a union contract, so that's a huge benefit, right? Yeah, I'm still in love with my job, and I look forward to coming to work every day. You know, I never dread going to work. As far as like last notes on the labor movement, you know, I think Hannah and some others touched on this before, but just the diversity aspect of it, right? We have firefighters of every gender, race, and ethnicity. If you want to combat things like the gender wage gap, you know, union contracts the best way to do that. It doesn't matter who you are or how you identify. Wages are in the contract, and they're already agreed upon. You know, things about yourself that you can't control are not going to be held against you when it comes to your wage and your benefits.
Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you so much for being here today. I was so excited to have you here. And then now we'll go on to Hannah. Any last words, job opportunities, internships for the students?
Yeah. So I think we are hiring 45 paras. Thank you to our teachers union who advocated for that. And then my wonderful coworkers on this call, we fought hard this summer, right, for that, and are going to continue fighting for higher wages and for more staff that we need. So yeah, there are positions you can apply for and be in our union right now. I think I hope my fellow union members on this call would say this, but I think we've gotten an incredible education in what it means to fight for our rights as workers and to come together and really be a community and a family and support each other. So yeah, come join us doing that. I'd also just say, if you are a young person who wants to transform our society, getting a union job is a really good way to do that. You learn a lot about power, and you learn a lot about organizing, and a lot about how to fight for, I think, some of the things that were really exciting to me about your platform, Christina, about like defunding the police, investing in social services, the Green New Deal, investing in public health, right, in sort of our communities and the things that our communities need. I think learning about how to do that kind of organizing, you can do in a union.
Definitely. And these are big issues that not only all of us on this call can change, but we need a lot more people to help us as well. Thank you. So now we're going to Lindsay.
I have a feeling we will have some jobs popping up after the decision was made on Monday by the school board to transition to hybrid. I've received communication from colleagues who intend to resign or have already submitted their letters for resignation, which is heartbreaking. So I do anticipate we will have some spots open up. One thing that gives me hope is that I know that our unions, I saw the question about, do our unions work together? And PAL CWA and LEA had a joint membership meeting the other day, the first time anything like that has ever happened. We've done a solidarity statement for the local firefighters when they had their campaign to get their fire captains recognized. Or help me, Seamus, now I'm forgetting.
Right, trying to get them included in this.
Yes, thank you. But yeah, so Matt Hall's been great about reaching out and encouraging all of us to work one another. And this is my first time meeting Mimi, even though it's virtually. So I'm glad to be connected to her too. So I think it's an exciting time, and definitely together we have more power.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this is unfortunately, the job openings too. But you guys working together, it's crazy to see. And it took me a while to realize the school board decision of going to hybrid or online has a trickling down effect, to the bus drivers. I think maybe a lot of people are not being aware of that, and that's just because of what's in the media. But yeah, taking that couple steps back and reflecting on that. Thank you so much for being here today. Looks like Mimi had to run. So we'll now go on to Jeff. What, if you guys are hiring, if there's any student internship opportunities, any final words?
So yeah, and my final words would go out to any of your followers who are young people. In looking at Christina here, you see a really extraordinary example of someone taking a big leap into the deep end of politics, and that's absolutely laudable. But if you're interested in getting involved, get involved and stay engaged. And you don't have to take the dive into the deep end. I applaud Christina for doing that, but I suspect there's some days she wonders what horrible, what has she just gotten herself into? But it's very important that we get our young people involved. It's very important that they be engaged and active in the political system. And being part of a union and working through a union lens is absolutely a great way to do that. I talked earlier about how, with the union, you're never alone. You've got people beside you, shoulder to shoulder, who can lift you up if you stumble. And you've also got folks beside you who can help educate and mentor and help you grow into the worker and the citizen that you want to be. Because somebody else has probably already walked that path or walked at least part of it, and can show you where the easy tripping spots are. And that engagement also goes to voting. I don't know how many of your followers realize this, but we had an election here in Douglas County for one particular county commission seat that came down to 6 votes. And if 7 more people had showed up to the polls and voted the other way, that election goes the other direction. And it doesn't matter who the candidate was, and doesn't matter what the issues are. The point is, somewhere there are 7 people who didn't show up to vote who could have changed that election if they had wanted to. And so get engaged, show up, vote, speak out, stand beside people who believe what you believe. Get your voices in unison. That's how you get heard. And that's the way we make this world a better place. You don't make the world a better place by yourself. You do it by linking arms with people who care about the things you care about and taking a step forward with them.
That was beautiful. that was great. Definitely when I always say, I can't do this by myself. I encourage everybody to get involved, even just a little bit, if you're a little bit curious, because it does take a big team, and you won't get much done by yourself. So I appreciate that. There was one more question for the panel. How often do our local unions work together? Is there something worth looking into more? Sounds like you guys work really well together. Did you guys have any extra comments on that?
I can add something. So I think Lindsay and I think we met, or maybe we'd met before Labor Notes, but so, and Seamus too was involved in planning a conference or like a training, a 2-day training for rank and file union activists. So the word rank and file means that it means 2 things, kind of. It means you're a member of a union, but it also means you stay in the job, right? You're doing the job so that you, as when you're a member of your union, you are like close to the concerns, right, of your fellow members. And so we all met through that planning process. I think actually Dean was president of the firefighters union at the time, but I think you came, Seamus. I remember being in a classroom at KU studying labor things. Yes, I remember that. But so that was something that we got a lot of support through other community groups to make that happen, and other labor unions across the country who are involved with Labor Notes. So I'd also encourage anybody who is first learning about the labor movement. Labor Notes writes really accessible materials about the labor movement and about how to really activate your union as a rank and file member. So I'd encourage folks to check out Labor Notes.
Yeah, I mean, I would say in the last year or so, we've actually, most of us, everybody here on the panel have worked together or written letters of support, been at a school board meeting or at the commission meeting for us, and there's a lot of momentum going on. You see other unions forming. You know, LJ World Guild, they just made their announcement. So the labor is growing within the community, and we're all in touch. We're all working together. You know, currently we're working with Matt Hall with the team series, as well as some of the other city unions and KNEA and LEA to start working on more of a formalized labor coalition and exploring those possibilities of seeing what we can perform. But I do want to touch on what Jeff and Hannah both said about being engaged and knowing your union. You know, if you find yourself, as for the young people listening, if you find yourself working in a career or a job in which there is a union, get involved. You know, I know the AFL-CIO, I follow their social media. A while back, they put something out. Union membership is like a gym membership. You know, you're not going to get anything out of it until you show up, right? The more you put into that union, the more strength there will be, right? I tell my membership all the time that me as a president, I'm nothing. I can do paperwork, respond to emails all day, right? And review policies within the workplace. But none of that matters unless we're going to activate on the word itself, union, right? Are we going to be a union? The leverage to negotiate that contract, the leverage to push through policy you want to see is the willingness of everybody to work together and to take that step, as Jeff said, lock arms and take that step forward. That's where all your leverage comes from. One man or woman or a team of 4 guys on an e-board, they're not going to accomplish anything on their own unless their membership is willing to show up.
Thank you so much. That was a great way to end this. I'm so excited for everybody to be here today in our community to learn more about unions, and I'm just so excited to work with everyone as well. And thank you so much for all you guys do in our community. Means a lot. So thank you all for so much for hopping on. And I do these community conversations about every Friday at 6 p.m. with different community members. Our next conversation will be with U.S. congressional candidate Michelle De La Isla next Friday, October 9th. More information about our conversation with Michelle will be posted on my social medias at Haswood for Kansas. So make sure to look out for that. Please feel free to always reach out to me with ideas or information on how I could be of help to you. Again, thank you all so much for hopping on. Take care. Have a nice evening. Wear a mask. Wash your hands. Most important thing today. And take care. Thank you so much for everyone attending. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christina. Thanks, everybody.